everybody to the CWR Live for Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. Part 3 of the Great Unmasking, Galactic Acupuncture and the Generosity of Being Selfish. We've been speaking in recent weeks about a great masquerade going on that's hard to spot because it looks like normalcy. The average state of reality around most of our planet is a massive shutdown state where people are busy pretending to be something they're not in order to keep the world machinery running. And we've been talking about where that comes from, the historical roots of it, how it's maintained, and what might we replace that with, especially this year, because there's so much energy moving through the cosmos, moving through cosmos and Earth this year for taking our masks off, especially connected to the Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions of April, June, and November, which might as well be going on for the whole year, because the imperative is here to unmask, to stop living as if this were your life and live that it is your life. and today I'm going to talk about the interconnectedness of all things. One thing that keeps people wearing masks is the illusion of separation, the illusion that the individual is cut off from love, cut off from self, cut off from the feminine, cut off from the masculine, cut off from God, cut off from goddess, cut off from each other. And this is an illusion because nobody is cut off from anything. But it's a very beguiling illusion, and it's one that's hard to crack, because if you take a person who is operating under the pretense that they're cut off, that pretense creates a filter around their perceptual faculties. And when they look through that filter, many things will happen that appear to provide evidence for that feeling that they're cut off from love, cut off from money, cut off from happiness, cut off from success, cut off from sexuality, cut off from friendship, cut off from spiritual transformation. You name it, it's a cutoff. It's a cutoff state. And this is the prevalent illusion. This is the dominant illusion. The dominant illusion is that you as an individual are not yet part of love, part of wholeness, part of cosmos, part of me, part of each other, part of your ancestors, part of the dead, part of the plants and the animals. And it creates this illusion of separation, which is responsible for most of the turmoil and agony in our world. Most of the turmoil and agony in our world can be traced to this illusion. When I was at one of my low points in my development back in the early 1990s, I was living in the Southern Oregon wilderness and reading Rudolf Steiner. And I stumbled upon a quote from him. I don't remember what book this was in. And here's the quote. "When tempted to find an imperfection in the universe, you'll make progress if you assume the flaw is more due to your temporary failure to grasp the underlying web of unity that connects all things rather than an actual imperfection. I'm going to run that one by one more time. When tempted to find an imperfection in the universe, you'll make progress if you assume the flaw is more due to your temporary failure to grasp the underlying web of unity that connects all things rather than an actual imperfection. This stunned me and awakened me as a young man experiencing a breakup of yet another love relationship and financial desperation. And what am I doing living here in this broken down shack in the middle of nowhere with a woman who I'm not getting along with? And if that was just the first such incident in my relationship history, it might not have been quite as daunting, but it wasn't. It was one of many. And that's when I stumbled upon that quote. And that sent a shock through my system. It was like manna from heaven. It fed me. It was a breakthrough moment in my life. And I endeavored for the next few years actually to live that truth, to take it into my soul, to make it my own, to work it from every possible angle. Because what Steiner is saying there is that whenever it seems as if something is really, really wrong, whenever it seems like something is the matter on any level, anywhere in the universe, the way to proceed is that it's only looking that way because you haven't noticed how that particular thing that seems to be wrong is actually woven into the fabric of all things and not some separate anomaly all by itself. This was food for life here. This was the stuff love is made of. This was the stuff of wholeness. This was medicine. This was the antidote for the part of my own soul that kept working for years and years and years to get love without really tapping the love that I had inside me already. This was the antidote for the part of me that was striving to hook up with some sense of connection outside myself without relaxing to deeply inhabit the connection that I'm already a part of. So the words of the master, Rudolf Steiner, the words of wisdom, led me eventually to come up with this idea of galactic acupuncture. And the idea is based on my belief that the human body is modeled after the greater body of the universe. That the universe is a single entity. And Earth is an entity. Earth is a conscious, sentient being. Her consciousness operates differently than the consciousness of humans or elephants or sea lions. But it's no less conscious because it's on a different order. Just like the consciousness of an elephant is not less than my consciousness, it's just different than. The consciousness of animals is not less than the consciousness of humans, it's just different. In some ways, it's more. And by extending that through Earth out into the universe, I came up with this feeling that the human body is modeled after the body of the cosmos, as if the cosmos itself is a single entity, a single being, and all the planets and everything else are inside its body. Just like Mireia has a single human body, but inside that body is a universe of electrons revolving, rotating around a nucleus of atoms. The atoms and the molecules and the cells inside a human body are like the planets and the comets inside the body of the universe. Whether you go deep in on a microscopic level to look at all the trillions of parts inside a single human being, or whether you go out to look at the planets and the stars and the comets, it's the same thing. It's the same model. Now, if that's correct, if the human body is modeled after the greater body of the universe, then it behooves every single part of the universe to work at optimal efficiency for the whole thing to run better. Just like with acupuncture, if somebody has a problem with their liver, an acupuncturist will place needles in their leg. Now, in visible surface appearances, the leg doesn't necessarily appear to be connected to the liver. But when you look at the invisible energy meridians, you could see that the organs are connected to the whole body. And that's why acupuncture works. Somebody has a problem with their kidneys, acupuncturist puts a needle in the back of their neck. Somebody has a problem with their lungs, and acupuncture needles go up and down the arm. When those needles stimulate the meridian that those organs belong to, you can produce healing in the organs by putting needles into other parts of the body. Even though your body is made up of separate systems, like the nervous system, the digestive system, the lymphatic system, the vascular system, veins and arteries, it behooves the entirety of your whole body for each of those systems to be operating optimally. Because if your foot is not working optimally, in some minute way, your lungs suffer because they're all part of the same organism. If your lungs are operating optimally, in some way that helps your brain and your foot and your fingers and your heart and your back. If we extend that analogy out through space, what we get is, if there's a problem on Earth, how could that not affect the whole universe? It's like saying, if there's a problem in your big toe, that has nothing to do with any other part of your body. If there's a problem with your digestive tract, that has nothing to do with your veins and arteries. It's impossible. Just the way that it behooves all parts of your body to work at maximum efficiency for the whole of your nature to be healthy, then it behooves each part in the universe to also work optimally for the whole universe to run optimally. So if the universe is a single body, you and I are parts in it, and so is Mars and Venus, and so are comets. We're all in that body. That means if human consciousness on planet Earth, which is a teensy little speck in the universe, this little blue-green planet that we live on, this teeny little atom, this little molecule in the greater body, if human consciousness is distorted in some minute way, the whole universe has a distortion in it. Because the part of the body of the universe that we are is not running clear, smooth, at maximum efficiency. And the scientific word for that is elegance, where the least amount of effort produces the maximum positive result. That's scientific elegance. I like that word because efficient sounds a little more sort of judgmental on a certain level. So if we make it elegance, it becomes a little more poetic, perhaps, and a little less biblical sounding. And so, therefore, when a single human being falls into the illusion of separation, their organs contract. They're laboring under the illusion that something's wrong. They haven't followed Rudolf Steiner's wisdom all the way through. They haven't realized that the lack of money or the lack of a lover or the lack of artistic success or the lack of sane politicians in your country still belong to some greater unity. And so at that moment, when the illusion of separation is running the show inside a single human consciousness, their organs contract, their energies withdraw. They're operating under this have to, I got to, I have to, I got to connect, I got to get love, I need money, I have to make it better, it's not working, it's not right, something is wrong. And that energy itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it creates something wrong, which is that you've fallen into an illusion. You've so fallen for the idea that you are cut off from the universe, that you're cut off from the masculine, you're cut off from the feminine, you're cut off from love, you're cut off from wholeness, you're cut off from healing. And when the truth is that you aren't, and you never were, and you couldn't be. You couldn't be extracted from the universe. If you decide to spend the rest of your life thinking thoughts of separation, at the end of your life, you would be as connected into the universe of all things as you ever were. All you would do was create the illusion of separation. And it's a very beguiling illusion. It instantly starts to eat away at your wholeness and the elegance of your body's functions, the elegance of the way the nervous impulses rush through your nervous system. You create a situation where you might as well be cut off from everything in the universe because you're acting as if you were. This is the story of mass humanity at this time. Mass humanity on planet Earth has created a situation where they might as well be cut off from everything else in the universe because they're acting as if they were, and it's producing the physiological effects in the human body and in the body politic, in politics and culture. It's producing a cutoff state, a cutoff illusion that makes people tend to get grabby and desperate and insecure. It produces the feeling of scarcity, of lack. We're running out. We're running out of time, we're running out of love, we're running out of money, we're running out of air, we're running out of this, we're running out of that. And that illusion has a nasty undertow to it. It's like it produces acid in the stomach. It's just hard to inhabit the grace of a human body where everything is running out. and everybody's disconnected. So it's an illusion that almost might as well be true because it produces a culture. It produces a war machine. It produces a state of fear and lack and scarcity that can be countered with a deeper inhabiting of the wholeness of all things. As Rudolf Steiner says, the illusion is produced by your temporary failure to grasp the underlying web of unity that connects all things. Because even if you push this scarcity to the max, like let's say we have about 5 minutes before the nuclear holocaust destroys our planet. Let's just push it to the max. Well, even so, if we have 5 minutes left before Earth gets totally annihilated and blown up, and everybody that you know and love gets annihilated and blown up, and all your dreams for the future get annihilated and blown up, you still have a choice of whether to meet the next 5 minutes from a place of unity or a place of fear. Nobody takes that choice away from you. If all we have is 5 more minutes, I prefer to spend that in unity than I do in fear. And so someday Earth's going to die. There is no doubt about that. All things that are alive will someday die. You will die. I will die. Your children will die. Your parents will die. Everybody will die. We're all going to die. Earth is going to die. Mars is going to die. Mercury will die. The sun will die. The stars that are alive now will die. Some of the stars that look like they're alive now are dead. It's just taking so long for their light to reach us that we don't know it yet. So they look like they're still alive. So once we make peace with the fact that everything is dying, we could get on with the fact that everything's also alive. Everything's also living. And so if you push the scarcity illusion of separation to the max, such as Earth is going to be blown apart in a nuclear holocaust in the next few minutes, and if you still have the choice of whether to meet that next 5 minutes from a place of wholeness and love, and if nobody has the power to steal your right to claim the love and wholeness from you, even if there's only 5 minutes left, then it's a personal decision. Then it's in your capacity to claim the wholeness of all things. To do that takes a willingness to feel the universe inside you and recognize you are absolutely woven into the elegant, intricate workings of all things, as is a raindrop, a mountain, a comet, a blade of grass. You belong to the universe. You absolutely belong to the universe. Just as much as a mountain, a planet, a blade of grass, an ant, a cockroach, a lake, a river, an ocean, a comet, a planet, a solar system, a galaxy. We all belong to ourselves and each other. Belonging to yourself is an act of self awareness that the universe inside you is as equally important as the universe outside you. You are no more important than a planet, and you are no less important than a planet. You are no more important than a galaxy, and you are no less important than a galaxy. If you make that leap of faith that the universe that you carry inside you is just as valuable and necessary as anything anywhere in the universe. Food, water, air, planets, mountains, rain, love, warmth, day, night, rotation, revolution. If the universe revolving inside you is equally important to the one revolving outside you, then it takes an act of profound self-recognition to claim your belongingness. Because until your belongingness is claimed, it's not fully activated. You're still part of the as-if species. One of my pet nicknames for humanity, the as-if species. We live as if we were alive, as if there was love, as if there was wholeness, as if there was magic. But there is. So to escape the as-if universe and to enter the universe is to claim your belongingness. In your own wacky way, in your own eccentric way, you belong. You fit. You don't have to always be looking for a fit. If you're always looking for a fit, you're forgetting the fact that you already belong to all things. If you're being driven, if you're being hounded by the sense of lack, you're not yet sinking deep down to inhabit your soul, like the most amazing easy chair that you could just sink right into, and it adapts to the shape of your body, and it totally supports your bones and muscles ergonomically. That's your soul. When you sink down deep into your soul, you gain the perfect fit. You banish the sense from your motivation that there's something wrong with you, that there's something wrong with the universe, that if there were any gods, that they've long ago abandoned us and we're on our own. You banish that. And you replace those stories of separation with a story of claiming your readiness to be astonished by the magic of your own existence. This is what I call the generosity of being selfish. If you become selfish enough, or let's say self-conscious enough, self-aware enough, I always got a kick. For the last 40 years, I've gotten a kick out of when somebody calls somebody else self-conscious as if it was something bad. What could be bad about being conscious of yourself? Oh, don't be self-conscious. Don't be so self-conscious. I pray that I can be self-conscious. Please make me self-conscious. I want to know who I am. I'm the closest being that I have to myself. If I lack awareness of who I am, what do I have? I have a incomplete consciousness is what I have. And so when I talk about the generosity of being selfish, I'm referring to the incomplete initiation to awaken and be willing to be astonished by who you are, by discovering the deeper layers of what you carry, of what you feel, of how you think. of what the dreams are that you've been carrying around. It takes a kind of a selfishness for many people who have been trained to not be in love with themselves. It takes a selfishness from that state. If you've been trained that you're no big deal and other things matter, if you've been trained that everything outside of you is far more important than what you carry inside you, if you've been trained to put yourself down and not make a big issue of yourself and you're no big deal, and the only thing that counts is what you do for others, then you've got to get selfish to be generous. Because until you elevate your sense of your own nature to be equal to everything else in the universe, until what you carry in the universe inside you becomes equivalent to everything outside you, you're failing to activate your own deep belongingness, and you're going to rush around the planet over and over and over looking for some place to belong. And it's going to be like the carrot on the stick in front of the donkey, because you're never going to get there. Because there is no belongingness. It's not a certain amount of money or a certain amount of love or a certain amount of health or a certain amount of friends or a certain amount of artistic creative success that is going to ever make you fit in and belong to the whole universe, unless you already do, unless you already grant yourself. It can't be this someday thing, because someday will never come. Someday, when I get X amount of social media contacts, I will make it. I will arrive. Someday, when I get X amount of dollars, I will make it. I will arrive. Someday, when I have X amount of love, I will make it. I will arrive. And it's an illusion. It's based on the distortion that you do not already belong to the universe and fit into the universe. And so we got to get this one. And it often takes a selfishness to realize that you are an astounding fucking miracle. With all your crazy, eccentric, distorted, blind spot, bizarre tendencies, with every wacky thing that ever happened to you, with all the people who failed to recognize you and misunderstood you and mistreated you, with all of that, you're a fucking miracle. You're an astounding walking bucket of love. You're a chamber of miracle. You're a conduit of wholeness if you let yourself be. And if you don't, you still are, but you won't know it, and neither will anyone else. So that's your choice. Your choice is to be a walking chamber of miracle, truth, and love and not know it, or to be a walking chamber of miracle, truth, and love and to know it. You don't have a third choice. This is a binary system here. And so the wholeness that you have inside you becomes activated when you accept it. And that's what I mean about the generosity of being selfish. It's that you become a conduit for the wholeness of the universe when you let yourself be. You become a distributor of love when you let the love flood into you. When you let the love of all things and the belongingness of all things and the wholeness of all things flood into you, you flood that into everyone else. You stream that through you into everyone else. And so this is what I mean by the Great Unmasking, Part 3, Galactic Acupuncture and the generosity of selfishness. Okay, Marcella, would you like to open it?
Sure. So for those of you that want to comment or ask a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you. I want to go ahead and just open it up to our tribal drumbeat folks because we so appreciate all the support that you offer us to keep doing these online teachings and offerings, and just encourage someone maybe who doesn't come forward very often. So if you want to weave in, we would love to hear from you. And I'll just say, Mark, it was really striking for me to feel the sort of, I guess I'd call it like the lemniscate of this conversation, where that generosity of selfishness can come through many forms, right? Sometimes it's by feeling how other people matter, at least for me, that has me actually include myself into that equation and also be able to get some of the benefits of what you're talking about, even if I'm not able to put myself first. I can still see that the love that we bring does help to still cultivate, you know, that sense of self-respect and dignity and understanding in situations where it matters, you know, it matters to be able to take a stand for people, even if it's not yourself, as a way of being able to care for ourselves, that it works both ways too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no one in our tribal drumbeat that wants to offer someone something, is there anyone of our guests that want to offer something or ask a question?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Carola.
I think, Mark, can you say more about this elegance? Because I think I'm so, familiar with this dynamic of acting as if, and the fighting, and seeing wrong things, and even the other day had a acid reaction to somebody who was so critical. You know, it resonated with me. I fell silent and stayed with my self-love, but that wasn't big enough to totally change the situation, because I think, in defending myself or protecting myself. So say a little bit more about this elegance, because
Yeah.
I think I'm full of effort still.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's that the energy of life and transformation is constantly streaming through all things. So when a nebula cloud of gaseous dust dies, it gives birth to a star. A star is born. And when a human being dies, their body goes back to the elements and it nurtures other life. When a fruit ripens and falls from the tree, if it sits on the ground, it rots and its nutrients go back into the soil and new life grows up from the nutrients. So all things in the universe are in a continual state of being born and dying, of rising up and dissolving. All things, planets, stars, trees, animals, human beings. And when that process operates at maximum efficiency, there's less there's less distortion in the system. There's less there's less sense of being cut off,
Mhm.
and there's more of a feeling of unity. And so,
Hmm.
so this is the elegance of unity that that we each belong to the to so many spheres of belonging. You know, I was born in Midtown Manhattan, in the middle of New York City. Some part of me belongs to the city. I have New York City in my blood, and I was born to my mother and my father, and so I belong to New York City. New York City belongs to me. We worked together. I belonged to my parents. They belonged to me. And then I moved out into further spheres. My writing moved out. My books went around the world. And my life became a part of many people's lives. People read my story. They were touched by my experiences. And there's an elegance in that, especially because my story inspired people who felt cut off in their own life to believe in themselves. They looked at this guy, this young guy who was pretty dysfunctional. You know, my story was a memoir of the mystery school that I was a part of under the giant redwoods in Northern California. And Rowan,
I need the thing. I'm young on online magic and I really need the thing.
I can't deal with that now, sweetie. I'm teaching. I'm sorry. So in my memoir exposed a young man's search for love and meaning and artistic success, and I turned my struggles into art. My goal was to make people around the world who read my book feel that whatever crazy problems they were wrestling with in their own life, that there was something beautiful inside them. And that if they didn't stop believing in the something beautiful, then it might come true. That was my story. The hidden message was, don't stop believing in your own beauty, in your own love, in your own greatness, because it might happen. And look at all the shit I had to go through to get through my own. And not like, therefore I'm a perfected being. I wasn't trying to preach from that level of I have no more problems and everything's wonderful. It was realer than that. I was trying to make spirituality and mysticism and astrology very real. And especially because it's based on the interconnectedness of all things. That's the basis of astrology. As above, so below. The Hermetic axiom of the ancient alchemists, the ancient Hermetic alchemists, as above, so below. And so the elegance that I'm talking about is the flow between the above and the below, that the cosmos and spirit are always flowing into you, but you're always flowing into them. And when there's the less obstacles to impede that flow, it's an elegance.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that too. I remember having this conversation with someone once where they were having to make some kind of choice and around housing. And as they were going through the process of figuring out the choice, it just became so clear and apparent that the whole universe gets heightened when we make a choice that really works, that really fits or suits with what it is that is wanting to cut, the kind of engagement that deeply honors our needs and honors what is possible for us in relationship to existence. And when more and more people do that, it frees up the resource, it frees up the engagement so that more and more can do that. Because if you think about every situation that gets created from a place of less understanding, of having less self-understanding, that means that that thing that may have been more, and of course the lessons are all perfect, so it's not like the wholeness isn't always there all the time, but in terms of specific choices and existence, every time we make that choice that isn't as self-honoring as maybe we know ourselves to be, then for whomever that was the perfect fit, it would no longer be available for them. So it feels like this elegance is, there's something really real about it. And the more that people actually make choices and live their life from that place of self-honoring and that place of self-knowledge, the more that is available to align with other people in the same way.
Right, right. It's not like there's a finite amount of love in the world. So if I take 30,000 units of love, there's 30,000 less units for everybody else. It's actually the opposite. If I claim 30,000 units of love, there's more love in the world. and so it takes a while to break out of a kind of scarcity mindset. Like somehow, if you operate at maximum efficiency, you're diminishing somebody else who's hurting. Like it was this thing, like when I was a kid in New York City, finish your vegetables because there are starving children in China. And I'm like, now how is finishing my vegetables going to help the children in China? I mean, I was asking this question when I was 4 years old because it didn't make sense to me. But it's this funny thing where there's this cultural shadow that states that because other people have lack, that there's something wrong with you having abundance.
Yeah.
And when you apply that to certain resources, I can see the truth in it. Like if Nestle company buys up all the water in the world, which they're trying to do right now, the Nestle company is buying up the water in Africa, in South America, because they know there's going to be water shortages and they want to make profit. They want to make gazillions of dollars selling water to people. It's true, if somebody hoards all the world's resources, there's less for others. But with things like love and wholeness and self-happiness, there's not a finite amount in the world. The more love and wholeness and truth and self-happiness you grant yourself, the more that becomes available for others, because you're not resisting yours. So you opened a trap door and yours came in, and now it's available for others. And it takes a while for many people to go through that initiation, because there's a training that says there's something wrong with you being outrageously happy. Not Rudolf Steiner, Hermann Hesse talked about this. Many of you know Hermann Hesse from his fiction novels, but few people know that he wrote nonfiction essays, gorgeous, beautiful, incredible essays. I love his nonfiction at least as much as his fiction, if not more. And one of his essays I read when I was a young man, he talks about this simple, mundane thing that happened that turned his way of thinking around, where Hermann Hesse was a hermit. He disliked leaving his home in the mountains of Switzerland to go do readings of his writing in cities, which was one way that he made money. And he hated having to do it, but he did it anyway. And on one of these trips, when he left his home in the mountains to go to the city to give a reading, he got on a train and he sat next to a businessman who was sitting next to him. And before he sat down, he put his little bag on the shelf in the train. And he was thinking, before I left my home this morning, my wife put a juicy red apple in my bag. And a little bit later on, I'm going to eat that apple. But for now, I'll leave it in the bag. And he was looking at this man next to him, who looked to Herman Hesse like a kind of a typical businessman. In the train, there were a lot of people who looked that way as this man. And he thought, should I break the silence that exists in these situations to show that we're two human beings, or should I just leave him in his kind of businessman state? And he thought, well, let me just break the silence. So he said, how are you? You know, he said, "Wie geht's?" to the other guy. And the other guy said, how am I? Puh, how can I be? The exchange rate these days and what they're doing in the government? Bah, how could I be? How could anybody be? How are we supposed to be? How could anybody be? Why do you even ask such a question? And anyway, wie geht's? Anyway, how are you? And Herman Hesse was thinking, well, my wife put a big red apple in my bag, but instead of saying that, he said, oh, I'm going to the city where I have to do some business and I don't even want to be doing it. And then they rode the rest of the way in silence. And when he got off the train, he felt a deep sorrow. And he thought to himself, why did I do that? When he asked me, how are you? I wanted to say, I have this big, juicy red apple that my wife put into my bag, and I can't wait to sink my teeth into it. But he held that back, and he thought to himself, why? Why do we hold our joy back against somebody's misery? It's this twisted attempt to meet them on their own level. But if anything is going to help the other person's misery, it's not going to be your misery. It's going to be your joy. He failed to give the other person a chance. And he realized that it was an act of cowardice. He was upset with himself for holding his happiness back. And he made an agreement that he was not going to do that again. And it's a beautiful little anecdote. It's a beautiful little lesson. Because if I can do anything to help the people in the world that are suffering, it's not going to come from me withholding my right to be happy. That's not going to help them. And yes, it's true. If Herman Hesse had said, well, I have this amazing apple, the other guy might have gotten pissed off. He might have even gotten more miserable, but that wouldn't have been Hesse's fault. It wouldn't have been on his conscience. He would have done the most he could to have reached out to that other fellow. And then if the other fellow still wanted to cling to his unhappiness, that's his choice. You have to grant people the right to their own misery if they wish to have it, but you should at least reach out. You should at least not withhold your happiness.
And plus, like what you were saying about choice, it's important that we don't mitigate other people's opportunity to make a choice in that moment with what they want to identify with when you present them with the red apple.
That's right. That's right. But it takes a boldness. It takes a bravery. It really, I understand Hesse's response. I've been guilty of the same thing over and over and over. I have casually turned my bliss away from my fellow man and woman. I have, that is definitely one thing I am very guilty of. I do that often. And, and in those moments, my feeling is, well, I'm happy inside myself, this person is miserable. Why do I want to have anything to do with them? And I just turn away. You know, it's a pretty selfish act on my part. And yeah, Mireya.
Yeah, I was thinking of it also from another side, which is what you were talking about at the beginning, right? In that need to belong. Like I remember as a little girl growing up in Mexico and, you know, being aware of a lot of poverty around me and need at times. I would go and my mother would do a lot of work in communities in need and I would go help. And I remember this feeling of wanting to belong, and therefore somehow in my brain I thought that by hiding what I had, there was a place that felt that would have them feel that they didn't have it. And I couldn't understand why we couldn't all have it. And because there was such a need to belong and connect, there was almost a thinking that the way to do that was that by bringing myself to whatever the equal place was. And it's so fascinating because with the line of what you're talking, right, if we're holding that big universe inside of us, then I can see, or we can see that perhaps on that particular one channel there isn't the connection or the belonging. However, it can come through in many of the other channels.
Yes.
And that by touching the other with that fullness of being, right, instead of defining it by the one specific of difference, which might be money difference or food difference, or right, the lack that you were talking about, if I'm holding that fullness, that perhaps in the fullness of my greeting the other person because they are another human and that has us belong, then there can be a mutual lifting almost. But it's like it almost requires like a whole other paradigm, right, that we can live together, as opposed to that sense of the separation that you were talking about, right, which with which we grew up in this kind of post-industrial world where we can't consider that we can actually all go through, that we can all have it. And whether it's through the love, through the, you know, the sharing of the apple in the train, right? And that might have brought a moment of joy for that man, or like our perspective is so limited, right, into what the belonging and the connecting will bring. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
hold on a sec. Marcel, do we have to sign off now for Rowan to be able to get on?
We are gonna have to wrap it up.
We always have I would love to be able to respond to you, but I can't because we have an agreement that we have to get off at 2:30 our time. But before we get off, Marcella, could you unmute everybody?
I can, yeah. And I just want to acknowledge the amazing comments and the folks that had their hands raised that we didn't get to today. I apologize. Uh-oh, I'm almost there. Okay, so I can unmute all.
I just, instead of using Bruce Coburn today, I want us all to sing happy birthday to Marcella. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Marcella. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Marcella.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks, honey. That felt really good. I can't wait till we have a sound engineer.